Meeting will come to order. Welcome to the fourth meeting of the 2023 Interim Joint Education Committee. Ask all members to silence their cell phones. Meyer, please call the roll.
Senator Carroll. Senator Funky Fromeyer. Present. Senator Givens. Senator Higdon. Senator Meredith. Present. Senator Neal. Present. Senator Stivers. Senator Thomas. Senator Tishner. Senator Williams.
Here.
Senator Wilson.
Here.
Senator Wise.
Here.
Representative Baker.
Here.
Representative Ballman.
Present.
Representative Bojanowski.
Here.
Representative Brown. Representative Callaway. Present. Representative Decker.
Present.
Representative Jackson.
Present.
Representative Lewis. Representative Massaroni.
Here.
Representative McCool.
Here.
Representative Rayburn. Representative Rawlings.
Here.
Representative Raymond. Representative Riley.
Here.
Representative Timoney.
Here.
Representative Truitt.
Here.
Representative Weber.
Here.
Representative Wilner.
Here.
Co-Chair Tipton.
Here.
Co-Chair Wise, or West.
Here. I've been called worse. We have a quorum. We have a quorum. We are duly constituted to conduct business. Any members have any introductions before we get into our business? Senator Williams first.
Yes, we have with us the Fayette County Classical Conversations homeschoolers, or is it Lexington Classical Conversation homeschoolers, and some of my great nieces and nephews, and I am their greatest uncle. Okay.
Obviously.
Yes.
If you could stand to be recognized.
Yes, please stand.
Thanks for attending. Senator Meredith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of guests, and I'd ask them to stand. One is Charlie Corbett, who's a constituent of mine, and Charlie's a frequent visitor here at the Capitol, but with him is his nephew. And the reason I asked this young man to stand up is we're here today to talk about organ transplant in education, and he doesn't look it, but Andy Wilkins is a double lung transplant recipient as a result of COVID. So he's kind of a walking example of how important lung transplants, all transplants are. And we're going to be doing some work on that in the future, hopefully, but appreciate you guys being here this morning.
Welcome. I've got a couple of constituents. I have Dr. McCullough from MCTC, if you would stand to be recognized. I have a feeling she might be here for the Huron Consulting Group report. I'm not sure. And then also have a constituent, Wendy Fletcher, is here, and if we could recognize these people. We need a motion to accept the minutes of our previous meeting. Do we have a motion? We have a motion from Senator Meredith. Do we have a second? We have a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. We're going to get right into our meeting today. Our first topic of the day is Coding Day at the Capitol. I know this is a good topic that Senator Givens is very interested in, and if you could come to the table right now and prepare to present. In this segment, you've got about 15 minutes, and when you're ready, you got to hit the microphones until the green light appears. And when you're ready, announce your names for the record, and then please proceed.
Cody Woody with code.org.
Sean Jackson with KDE.
And I'm Monique Rice with Advanced Kentucky.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody.
If you could hold on 1 second, you need to share the screen with us for your PowerPoint. Might need some.
What do I need to do?
Nope. That's not doing it.
Yeah, let's
Let's
get
see
out of here.
Is this not? Is this one non-plugged in? Oh, got
Oh,
it.
gotcha.
It was behind everything else. Okay. Just the PowerPoint.
I was just gonna do the screen itself as opposed to the whole
Okay.
thing. Nope, that's not. That's not what I want it to look like. You would think that folks coming here talking computer science could get this slideshow working, but
We're used to irony here.
Yeah. Well, you know,
slideshow
from the beginning.
from the beginning. It keeps showing this version of this game. Okay.
Okay. Just
Yeah, we're just gonna do it this way.
I know.
It just really
Really
wants
does
to
not-
do that.
Yeah.
So we're not gonna do that. Here we go. I'm just gonna do it. I'm just
Help is
gonna
on the
do
way
that.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it keeps automatically. There we go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's
Hey.
hide this. All right. Now go to the next slide.
Ready, Cody?
Ready.
We are ready whenever you are.
Yep.
Thank you. Good morning, members. My name is Cody Woody, and I serve as the Director of State Government Affairs for Code.org. I'm here to talk about expanding computer science in your great state. So, why is computer science needed in the state of Kentucky? To further attract employers and large-scale economic development projects, Kentucky will need to produce a workforce pipeline that keeps up with the workforce demand. The state currently has 3,432 open computing jobs with an average salary of $74,833 per year. And when we think about computer science, I kind of want to let you know that we're just not preparing students just for a tech job or just going to a tech company. But when we think about computer science, we're thinking about it a lot further. Healthcare, transportation, and agriculture. But yet, there are only 706 graduates in computer science in 2021 and 22 school year. And only 63% of the Kentucky public high schools teach a foundational computer science course, which left many of these jobs unfilled. So just to brag about Kentucky a little bit, what has Kentucky been doing around computer science? The Kentucky Department of Education developed a state plan for K-12 computer science in 2022, as required by Senate Bill 193 in 2020. The state plan outlines a list of strategic goals to expand computer science in the state of Kentucky, which you can see online at the Department of Education. Kentucky also adopted the K-12 computer science standards in 2019. Funding. SB 193, 2022, dedicated $800,000 to computer science and the IT Academy to address the growth in computer science learning. My colleague here, Sean, will go a little bit more detail about the funding aspect of it. Speaking of Sean, the state of Kentucky has a designated state position on computer science. So that's a really good position. It shows that y'all are really prioritizing computer science and help coordinating the efforts to expand computer science in Kentucky. Kentucky also passed a permissive and encouraging policy to allow computer science to count as an elective science course or a fourth-year mathematics credit for graduation, but it's only a district decision. Here's a looming question. How can we increase computer science in the state of Kentucky? What we would need to do is require all high schools to offer a computer science as part of their K-12 curriculum. To do so, here are some of the following criteria we at Code believe need to be met. Require all high schools in the state to offer one or more computer science courses, and provide public access to the description of the requirement. Here's an interesting fact. As you see, in 2017, only 4 states adopted an all high schools offer policy requirement. 2023, we're up 25 additional states, which has us at 29. And there's a list of the states that have adopted than all high schools offer requirement. To go even further, we have 7 states that have a graduation requirement policy in place, as you can see. Here's another approach. I know that workforce has always been an issue all over the state, but here's an approach that we believe would help out with the recruiting and retaining of a teacher to teach computer science. The state approves a computer science pre-service participation program meeting the following criteria that Code believes. The state requires all pre-service teachers from any subject area be exposed to computer science content and pedagogy within the teacher's pre-service program. The state provides scholarships for pre-service teachers to take a computer science course. The state provides funds to the teacher preparation institutions to establish pre-service computer science education programs, or the state approves programs in institutions of the higher education that prepares pre-service teachers to teach computer science and lists those programs publicly. And that concludes my presentation.
And I'm going to pick up where Cody left off and really we're going to zoom the lens in. And for over 30 years, KDE's Office of Education Technology has been the national leader in providing access and integrating technology infrastructure into our school systems. And also into our instructional practices across grade levels and across courses of study. Through our development of strategic partnerships like the one you see represented before you today, we have taken the approach to promote and accept computer science as an academic and workforce priority, And that began to take shape with Senate Bill 107 all the way back in 2016. Started laying the foundation for us by adding the term computer science to existing education statutes and making sure that it was established as yet another course priority area for the Department of Education. Additionally, that prompted us to begin writing in acceptance of the Kentucky Academic Standards for Computer Science, which then defined computer science in the state of Kentucky as an academic discipline that encompasses the study of computers and algorithmic processes, including their principles, hardware and software designs, applications, networks, as well as their impact on society. And while programming and coding is an essential part of the curriculum, studying computer science in our schools goes well beyond programming. Again, like Cody mentioned, Senate Bill 193 in 2020. The General Assembly continued laying a path for progress for us to take, requiring that KDE annually report on the access and implementation of high school computer science coursework. Additionally, funding was set aside and given to the Office of Education Technology to promote computer science industry certifications, advanced placement exams for high school students, and additionally set aside funding to promote teacher preparation in the computer science discipline. That was incorporated into our Kentucky Education Technology System's shared services budget. And that budget goes directly to schools and districts to service the students and teachers there. Now, since 2020, we've seen an increase of 10% in the number of students taking foundational computer science courses yearly. With partners like Code.org and Advanced Kentucky and our member school districts, we launched out on a course of action that started removing systemic barriers to offering computer science for our school districts. The approval for computer science certification program is one we're really proud of. It's a unique type of certification that allows any high school-based certified teacher to seek this certification and become eligible to teach any computer science course at the high school level. Additionally, that funding goes directly into our CSIT Academy to fund industry-recognized certifications, advanced placement exams, and those numbers have growing participation annually. CTE pathways have undergone a huge round of revisions and embedding programming into each and every one so that they meet the minimum standard for being foundational computer science courses. And again, we continue to prioritize K-8 learning opportunities in computer science because as we build the pipeline, that's how we get the most competent students and we exit the most competent leaders in our workforce. But we're not done yet. We have several ways to iterate forward. Our comprehensive state computer science plan covers K-12 and is centered around three ideas: around thinking, learning, and doing CS. Thinking programmatically about how we teach it, how we prepare learners and teachers to engage in these opportunities, and then doing CS, actually getting down and participating in the learning process. And as we think about the Industry 4.0 skill demand, which is a very popular topic right now, competencies in cybersecurity, implications for data science, machine learning, and of course artificial intelligence become more relevant than ever across several industry sectors. And then automation, generative design, and infrastructure are all aspects that continue to be important, but have changing shape as we develop the conversation. I think about IBM's recent slogan that trust is our license to operate. In the state of Kentucky, when it comes to computer science, relevance has to be our license to operate. And so we need to continually reiterate and not have some of these pathways and programs frozen in time, but agile enough to change with the needs of the workforce as we move forward. And I'm going to turn it over to Mondi to zoom in a little bit more on some of this stuff.
Thank you, Sean.
Yes.
My name is Monique Rice. I am Program Director of Advanced Kentucky's Computer Science Initiatives. Advanced Kentucky is an initiative of the Kentucky Science and Technology Corporation. And I'm really happy to come to you before you today to talk a little bit about computer science in Kentucky and some steps that, in our experience, we'd recommend that we should take to move forward. First of all, a little bit about Advanced Kentucky CS initiatives. We provide professional learning for teachers K-12. We have partnerships with Kentucky Department of Education and code.org, but we also have partnerships with CS for All, and we work with our iCode KY program is with Apple, and we work with Somerset Community College for additive manufacturing. All of these partnerships and things allow us to provide that professional learning, but also advocate for computer science. We provide pathways for teachers to earn the approval for computer science that Sean mentioned earlier. In fact, we've had well over 100 teachers so far come through our programs and earn the approval for computer science, regardless of what their original certification is. So we've had people certified in English as a second language. We had teachers in English, in history, in math, and science, and all sorts of areas, including the teachers at our ATCs and other CTE pathways. We also assist districts in developing a comprehensive K-12 CS plan. We believe that that's a good step for the district to kind of sit down, take stock of what they're already doing, and then look at what they can do to improve and increase the number of students who take computer science within their district. So our first recommendation is to make computer science foundational. We want to expand computer science in grades K through 8. We focus a lot on high school, but we need a little bit more laser focus on K through 8. Especially K-5, where we currently don't have a way to measure how much computer science is being taught in those grade levels. We really think that computer science, the study of algorithms, the study of patterns, the study of the internet, the study of all of these things, not just programming, is also puts forth students' strengths in problem solving and give them skills that apply to not just careers in coding, although we need a whole lot of more students to do that, but also careers in other areas. We think that we should assist school districts in developing that K-12 CS plan, that they need to sit down with the state plan, look at what's going on with their districts, and expand the computer science knowledge to all students. We really think that computer science needs a rebrand in terms of being content that is foundational and necessary, as opposed to things that are just an elective that certain kids take if they fit a certain stereotype. The second step we think you should take is we should modernize our computer science pathways. CTE has pathways in computer science and in lots of other areas, which are meant to prepare students for a career in that area. The computer science pathways have been virtually the same for years. And I don't know if you've noticed, but technology has changed a lot, like even in the last 6 months. ChatGPT, anybody? Revitalizing our current pathways and having new pathways that address stuff like AI, cybersecurity, etc., are what's needed in terms of getting students better prepared to go into these careers. We need to recognize those area technology centers that offer computer science pathways and provide incentive to those ATCs that do not. When we look at our area technology centers, which are centers for our CTE programs, we'll see that 39% offer a computer science pathway and 61% do not. I think that we should have more, not fewer, ATCs offering computer science pathways. We need to incentivize that. We need to recognize those that already do, because in order to get more students prepared for the workforce in using those technological advances, we're going to need more students who can go into those computer science pathways.
If you could wrap up in about 1 minute, I've got several questions here, so I'm going to
All right.
defer. Thank you, I appreciate it, but this.
I'm going to speed up.
No, you're good. You're good. Thank you.
Okay. So this is a slide of demographics, racial demographics of students taking computer science versus the statewide representation. We noticed that when you look at racial breakdown, white, African American, Hispanic, not listed includes things like Pacific Islander and other areas. We just lumped them all together. But notice that we're pretty much on par as far as racial demographics when you compare the students who are taking computer science versus the entire state. However, when you look at girls, we'll see that only 38% of the students who are taking computer science are girls, where nearly half, as we would expect, the students in the state are girls. We have a big issue there, and we need to look at ways to address that. So the third thing that I want to mention is we need to encourage girls to participate in computer science. Raise expectations for all students will help doing that. Supporting and participating in programs aimed at increasing female participation in STEM fields will also do that. So I'm going to end on our vision. We envision a future where computer science education is an integral part of K-12 curriculum, providing all students with essential knowledge and skills for success in the modern world. And I'm going to say one more thing. Today is the Coding at the Capitol Day. We had our opening session. We have students in room 171 with a student showcase demonstrating what they've been doing in their schools. I encourage you to drop in and visit those tables and talk to those students. They'll be there until at least 3 o'clock today. And we have lunch for you should you have time. Provided in room 169 starting at 11:30. So we'll have box lunches for the legislators as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Excellent presentation. Members, I'm getting ready to do questions. The amount of questions we can handle will be determined on how long your questions are. So if you could please keep it tight. We got 5 people to ask questions. Chair Tipton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I could probably ask questions for half an hour, but I'll get back with you on some of this stuff, and I'm really interested in the teacher preparation aspect of this, because I suspect one of the reasons why we have schools who do not offer the courses is the availability of teachers qualified to offer that. I may defer and get back to that. A more general question: we're hearing a lot about AI today. Could you share some comments on the implications of AI as it regards to computer science and where you see that going?
You're calling that a short question? Explain AI in 1 minute.
Cody Woody again. We have our president, Cameron Wilson, here from code.org that can answer that question.
Thank you, esteemed members of the committee. I'm Cameron Wilson, for the record, president of code.org. So let me repeat the question back to you. I wanted to understand the implications of AI and computer science. There's 2 broad categories in how we're looking at this right now. AI has always been part of computer science for a number of years through machine learning. It's in everything you're doing on a day-to-day basis. It's in our phones. It's driving a lot of industry. It's just been part of our world for a while now. The thing that's different, what's on everyone's minds, is around generative AI that really burst onto the scenes in a consumer way in the past, 8 to 10 months or so, and took the world by storm. So the way we're thinking about it in terms of its transformation around computer science and education itself is it's likely to change how we think about students engaging with computer science and generating code. We still see a world in which students need to read code and understand it, but they might have new tools to really help them generate code, have AI tutors that sit beside them, and to help them along the way to the question about teacher capacity, and help augment the teacher experience and actually make it a little bit easier in the day-to-day classroom. So that's like part of it, how it affects the teaching of computer science itself. How generative AI transforms industry more broadly, I think, is just a broad, open question, and I don't really want to speculate on it right now. I think we're all learning that. And I know it's literally, I'm president of an organization, and I've been using generative AI for different things, like helping establish rubrics around how we think about things, or it's just in a day-to-day basis, we're all learning how it might change things. And then thirdly, it's likely to integrate across education and hopefully and ideally in ways to make education better, as really the opportunity that we see, making the teacher experience and removing some of the rote tasks that they do, or helping augment different subjects that teachers may not have tons of experience with as they're teaching, to help serve along as a teaching assistant with them. So those are some of the ways that we've been thinking about it, which is broadly how AI affects computer science in the field, and then how AI is integrated across education itself. Thanks.
Thank you, Representative Decker.
Thank you. I appreciate your presentation. Very thorough and very excellent. Thank you. My question is about the Advanced Kentucky CS initiatives, and specifically the part where you say that there are going to be pathways for teachers. We need pathways for teachers. You all offer to receive this ACS. Is that in professional development, like on professional
Yes.
development
So-
days, and how many would it take?
We already have a program. It's our Code.org professional learning program that teachers can take to earn the approval for computer science. So all they would have to do is basically sign up for it. The program runs all year. It consists of a 5-day summer institute with support throughout the school year for those teaching the courses. And the two courses that we're supporting are computer science principles and AP Computer Science A, which is programming in Java. So taking that coursework and participating in that year-long program, at the end of it, at the beginning, they get a temporary approval so that they can teach the course as we go along. And then at the end, assuming they've completed and been active participants through the whole time, they will receive the ACS, which gives them approval to teach not only that course for which they've been trained, but any other course listed as CS or IT.
Quick follow-up.
Quickly, please.
So, how much time do you think it takes during the year for them? Is it an additional time to their current workload, or help?
So assuming they're teaching the course for which they're being trained, if you're doing CS principles, for example, we have meetings every month, and they have asynchronous work between the meetings. So my facilitators, who are also Kentucky teachers who have been through the program and teaching the courses, they lead these synchronous meetings, and they go over the asynchronous work, and they do more work. It's meant to be in time. So they're talking about the lessons approximately the time that they would be teaching them if they're teaching the course.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, Representative McCool.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You mentioned about this being a fundamental part of the educational process, and I'm good with that, but I don't know if that's something that the legislature should be pushing, but more of a supporting. So this should be something driven, if I understand, from KDE, so you have more flexibility because it's coding and various things changes. It gives you more flexibility to adjust.
I think that on the whole, we have a lot of the systems already in place to be able to put these types of courses in right now in our school districts, whether it's finding, certifying a teacher, finding the coursework, finding the curriculum, because we have partners that are developing those things with us. I think the sense of urgency and the needed support from this body is to continue with the Kentucky Education Technology Systems shared services budget, but also by understanding that we will be required to continue to adapt these types of courses and curriculum, very, very quickly. We can't, there are times where sometimes it takes 2 years to get, some curriculum changes across. We need to be able to create pathways and systems that are agile enough to answer the needs and demands of industry right now, but also almost be, I hesitate to say future-proof because we don't know what the future holds. But really, I think those types of priorities and your support is always needed in that realm.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Thomas.
Thank you, Chairman West. And my question is both for Mr. Jackson and Ms. Rice. You know, we talk a lot about workforce development here in Kentucky, and I'm of the opinion that as we talk about pathways, we shouldn't just start in high school because the younger you can get children interested, and I'm not talking, and I make this clear every time I say this, I'm not talking about majoring in a subject or creating hard guardrails in terms of identify requiring students to take or choose a certain pathway in 4th or 5th grade, but exposure. My focus is on exposure. And I'm in firm agreement that computer science should be offered in all high schools. I mean, this is 2023 now, and learning has changed since I was in high school, and we all need to get on board on that now. It's a different world out there. But I don't know why we don't go any further and say that even in K through 8 schools, we should have computer science offered in those schools. You talk, Ms. Rice, about the differentiation between girls and boys. I would submit to you that a lot of that is socialized early on in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, and the more we drill down and tell these young ladies, in 3rd or 4th grade that they can learn math and that math is something that they should develop an appreciation for and be encouraged to have develop an appreciation for, just like boys. I know Senator West and Senator Tipton, Representative Tipton, are going to talk about doing some kind of numeracy act this year. That I think is definitely needed as much as English. So I would propose that we think about having computer science in K through 8 schools as well. That courses are offered in computer science in those schools as well. Your thoughts there?
Well, earlier I said that we need to make computer science foundational. I totally agree with you. It should be something that we teach to students. We expect students to have a working knowledge of photosynthesis. We expect students to have a working knowledge of British literature. We should expect students to have a working knowledge of how the internet works. We should have students to have a working knowledge of an algorithm and what that means, of how to process and how to think, of how to break a problem down into smaller parts and to make that happen. That doesn't just happen in high school. High school, I would propose, is too late. We need to be bringing that stuff in together from grades, kindergarten, pre-K, all the way all along. It should be part of what we do.
And just to springboard off of that, K-8 learning of computer science is part of our comprehensive state computer science plan. It's a prioritized area. But another part of our OET shared services budget is centered around the Student Technology Leadership Program, STLP, which is now in its 30th year. And that is Kentucky's, homegrown premier project-based learning organization for students. So some students get the opportunity there. However, integrated into a curriculum and program within the school day is always going to benefit students because they can see how it connects to all the different structures of learning that they do.
Thank you. We're not going to take a vote on this, but having a computer science degree, I think, well prepared me to understand and use Mason's Manual of Legislative Procedure later in my life. It worked out pretty well. But I have a real life example and a short question. I have a friend who 15 years ago had a MS in bachelor's in math, MS in computer science. In his 20s and 30s, he ran a computer company, developed software. In his 30s and 40s, he actually marketed that software and other software all over the world. In his 50s, going through his midlife crisis, he decided that he would wanted to teach high school computer science. This is 15 years ago. He was unsuccessful in doing that. He could not get a certificate. So my question to you is, could that person today, how long would it take him to get into the classroom, and what courses would he have to take to be able to teach computer science at the high school level?
I'll tell you what, that speaks directly to the situation that I found myself in several years ago. The only reason that I'm Dr. Jackson is because I wanted to teach high school computer science. I was a high school history teacher. But I saw the need. I was working with technology at our high school, and getting my doctorate plus the endorsement was the easiest way. I wouldn't go back on my decision. I'm not questioning my decision. However, to your question specifically about your friend, we have occupation-based certification tracks now that, hey, he's worked in the industry, he has the experience. As long as he does some sort of mentorship program and some monitoring with a mentor teacher, he can qualify to teach at a Kentucky high school in the area that he was in industry. And somebody like me who has a background in social studies or English or whatever can sign up for the professional learning program from Advanced Kentucky, and within a year, they get the temporary provisional kind of certification for the year that they are in the program. And then at the end, it is a transportable certification. And so we are continuing to try to move that barrier. That was the biggest complaint from the get-go, was we can't find teachers certified in this. Or I have somebody who came from industry that wants to teach this, but they don't want to go back and get another master's degree. We have several avenues to approach those issues currently.
So he can get in the classroom right away. How many years of how many education classes would he have to take to?
I would have to go back and refresh my memory on that option, but sometimes it's not any, depending on
I'll
people's
follow up
situations.
afterwards. Thank you.
Senator Givens.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I want to acknowledge, first of all, my appreciation for you allowing time, because you've been very generous in your time. And this is a passion project for me, as you know, and so thank you in advance for that. I also want to challenge my group of colleagues in the room. Senator Thomas and Senator Funky Frohmeyer and I walked through the student setup a few moments ago. I encourage all of you to do it. As it stands right now, Senator Thomas is ahead in the contest to learn how to code.
Oh.
He sat down and did some block coding with a young lady who was very, very patient, teaching him how to code. And I think he wants to go back for more. So I would encourage all of you, please go by, see the students. You have voters there, future voters there. Grab some lunch. This group has worked so hard to make it happen. I want to also quickly acknowledge, Mr. Chairman, the role that LRC has played in making this whole thing come together for all of us. So take advantage of that. I've got to do a shout out to KDE, KSTC, Code.org, President Cameron, thank you for being here and helping lead this effort, Advanced Kentucky, and so many others. Last quick thought, what can you do besides going by and getting a free lunch and investing some time in these young men and young women learning how to code? What else can you do? We've had some great ideas here around policy making. Graduation requirement, ? Factor into school accountability scores, their quality of their coding programs, ? Third ? Should it be a requirement for each district to have a K through 12 CS plan aligning with the state plan? That's the third ? The fourth one, Senator Williams, you just mentioned certification tracks. So there's lots of policy points we can interact in. So number one, my charge is be a policymaker. But number two, be a champion. Be a champion. Take a look at December 4 through 10. Monique and I were talking about, that is the hour of code. There's a $10,000 prize hanging out there potentially for any of your school districts that can rally enough students to lead the charge in hour of code. Talk to your district administrators, talk to your schools. Let's get a lot of young people to go through that hour of code, because that's when the light bulb first goes off for them. Secondly, keep promoting it to students and families. It's a wonderful opportunity for someone to learn problem solving, learn relevance, learn self-discipline. They don't have to become a coder. They can take those skills and do lots of things with them. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You are welcome, and I put you at the end purposely because I know you've been a champion for this issue for many years, and you're a big reason that these people are here today. That'll end this segment. Thank you for the great presentation. Thank you for the good questions, members.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice day. Up next, we have the Association of Scholars. We have one presenter in person, and I think we have 2 Zoom. There we go. And before you start, just want to let you guys know, you guys are victims. You're victims because the first presentation went a little long. So our members like to ask a lot of questions. So you've got about 20 minutes. If you could please keep it within that time frame, we would appreciate it. State your name for the record and proceed.
Okay. My name is Ben Foster. I'm president of the Kentucky Association of Scholars. And I want to thank the members of the committee for allowing me to speak about the need for reform in public universities and colleges. I'm testifying as a citizen of Kentucky, not speaking in any way as a representative of the University of Louisville. So I'm assume you have copies of the presentation. So first, I just want to say on page 2, I support diversity. I've done research that shows the benefits of diversity. I've attended many diversity events at the University of Louisville, and I agree with a lot of what has been presented at those. If you go to the next slide, though, I think a serious issue facing higher education in Kentucky is the lack of philosophical diversity. And I'm going to present some information about that. On page 4, see, in the past I have done a study.
If you could hold up 1 second. We're not seeing a slide presentation on the screen.
Yeah,
Is it supposed to be up there? Is that, are you?
I was just hoping you could see it from the handout.
Everyone should have a handout of this presentation in your folders to go along with, in case we can't pull it up.
Showing.
There it goes.
Okay. So
Please proceed. Thank you.
Thank you for that. One of the most pressing issues is the lack of philosophical diversity at universities in Kentucky. And I did a study a while back looking at donations for federal offices after the 2016 election and found that of donors that worked for public universities, 83% of the total donors gave to the Democratic Party, and that included 87% of the people who donated from UK donated to the Democratic Party, and also at U of L close to 86%. Okay, so we can have an issue with that, and I wanted to show how that may impact students. So on this slide, I'm just presenting some excerpts from a syllabus for English 101 class, and a student sent this to me and said they were going to drop this class, and one thing that stood out to me was the last sentence about we have a collective right to educated opinions, and you'll be asked to leave if you violate a statement on civility. And I would think that the educated opinion might be in the opinion of the particular instructor. Also, there are a couple of examples that were sent to me from University of Kentucky where students were stated they might be subject to penalty because they made a statement that was offensive, which was that there are only two genders, male and female, and that was going to be violation of some policy that they had for discussion in their class. Also, I want to give an example that related to the University of Louisville. The Wednesday after the election day in November 2004, when George W. Bush was reelected, a conservative student entered the class, sat down. This was before class began, but heard the instructor talking to other students about the results of the election and how disappointed they were. And the professor said something like it was due to those fundamentalist Christians voting on family values, so we ought to have AK-47s and take care of them. Okay. Now, obviously, the professor was joking, but that led me to be more active about trying to create some diversity on campus to have views that are beyond just what a certain view is. Okay. And another incident recently, we had a Christian student left a pamphlet just on a desk in the back of a classroom stating a Christian view of sexuality in the classroom, a Christian view of sexuality in that classroom. So a professor and department chair at the University of Louisville said on an episode of his non-U of L podcast, "Come to one of my classes with that. I will drag your behind into my class. Me and my 50-odd students will stomp you, beat you within an inch of your life, and then drag you out of the room and deny that we did it." Now, the professor said that he was joking, but his phrasing could be misinterpreted. But the reason that sticks out to me is because this person is an administrator at the university, and that can actually lead to perceptions that universities, that's kind of a university attitude. That same person writes editorial columns for the Courier-Journal. That person has stated in those columns or implied that Daniel Cameron is a dangerous, melanin-enhanced, skinning and grinning buck dancer desiring to be embraced by his masters. Now, that same person was asked to be a speaker at a conversation on diversity and inclusion in 2015, and that person stated at that, "Our white brothers and sisters need to get beyond the point where we are just hiring safe Black and Hispanic folks." And in relation to those folks, the person then said that you folks are tokens. You are no good to any of us. You take us down dangerous paths, and you are no good for diversity. Okay. Again, that is an administrator saying this at a university event, and the U of L president hugged the person after he spoke. Okay. So the professors have the right to free speech. We have certainly right to free press. However, when we have administrators that are frequently pointed to as an expert on race and those type of matters, making those type of comments, then it creates an atmosphere of not necessarily fear, but something that will chill free speech and debate on campus. One thing that can result from this type of an attitude is there was a actual advertisement for a professor in 2015 at the University of Louisville that stated that they are an equal employment opportunity employer. And then at the end of the statement, it said this position will be filled by an African American, Hispanic American, or Native American. Just the fact that someone would think that that was appropriate or legal leads to to me, the impression of what pressure is coming from administrators and the general atmosphere at the University of Louisville. Okay. Another issue with our public universities is official statements that appear to be political in nature rather than educational and the search for the truth. We had an official statement that came out just a couple of days before the 2018 general election that said that we must fight against oppression, and we must speak against policies that will repress and deny the rights of others, and that included a proposed policy to define gender at birth, measures to stop immigrants from crossing the border into our country, and at the end they said, I encourage all of us to stand collectively and individually for the values that lead us to a more just and inclusive society. Okay. Another example is after the Breonna Taylor verdict. The same department issued a statement saying that we need to channel our rage and pain into action. We need to contact our legislators to hear our voices through direct contact and by voting. Okay. And we had a blanket email asking U of L employees to sign something saying we support the Black Lives Matter movement and principles. Okay. Recently, one of the departments sent out a notice about the decision to overturn the Roe versus Wade decision, and they said that reproductive health care is a basic right, which has been threatened by this decision to overturn the decision. Okay, so I would say that in themselves may not be bad, but when I look at this, these are statements that come across that are alternate views of those type of issues, and here's all of them I could find. It's blank. Okay, so based on that, I think there's evidence of overwhelming bias at Kentucky public universities and a lack of diversity, and I think legislative action is needed to address these issues. Thank you.
Okay. Is that all the speakers you have? No one.
And we got the two others.
Okay. There are 5. We have 5 to 10 minutes left in this segment. So if you want to save time for questions, that's up to you. But that's about how much time. About 10 after is as far as we can go. Okay.
I was going to speak briefly about legislation we recommend, and then my boss, President Peter Wood, was going to conclude. If I may briefly,
if you would please identify yourself for the record.
Yes. David Randall, NAS Director of Research, Co-Chair West, Co-Chair Tipton, distinguished members. Delighted to be able to testify, building off of the testimony of Professor Foster on the need in Kentucky, just briefly saying that there are a variety of National Association of Scholars model bills we would recommend, particularly in the Civics Alliance Model Higher Education Code. We particularly recommend stuff which has already been enacted in Ohio for a Model School of Intellectual Freedom Act, which this summer has just passed and authorized 5 independent centers devoted to intellectual diversity, freedom, and the American heritage. We then have a variety of other bits of legislation that we think would be very useful for reforming the public university system, including a Campus Intellectual Diversity Act, a Chinese Influence Transparency Act, a College Finances Act, all about transparency and accountability, institutional neutrality, non-discrimination, depoliticization, civic knowledge. And since there's only 5 minutes, I will stop here and say thank you very much and go on to my boss, President Peter Wood.
Well, I'm Peter Wood, the president of the National Association of Scholars. I appreciate this opportunity and realize the very limited amount of time here, so I'll be speaking in, I think, broad terms. My organization for the last 36 years has attempted to steer American higher education onto a better path. What I mean by that is that we are champions of liberal education as the centerpiece of what higher education should be. And by liberal education, we mean the kinds of education that fosters intellectual freedom, that searches for the truth, and which prepares citizens for virtuous citizenship. We're not in any way opposed to the practical side of higher education, such as we've just heard from the preceding people testifying on the need for better computer science instruction at all levels. That fits with our idea of what liberal education should be. I would think that what we stand for would be uncontroversial with most American people, but it's not that way on most college campuses, where higher education for the last several decades has first drifted, then leaned into, maybe stampeded is the better word for today, into a view that intellectual freedom is a sham, that the cause of social justice means that we should overlook the tried and true standards of searching for truth and preparing people for virtuous citizenship. Something more like global citizenship is the cause that has captured the hearts and minds of a fairly large percentage of our college faculty and our administrators. Now, Kentucky policymakers have the opportunity to join a emerging national movement. Legislatures in many states have now taken up parts of this in trying to figure out how to steer American higher education, especially public colleges and universities, back on course. In the moment or two that I have, let me just mention a few possibilities. One is that Kentucky could benefit from creating autonomous centers of intellectual freedom on its campuses. This is not a brand new idea. In 2016, Arizona created what it called the School of Civic and Economic Thought and Leadership. That's become a model around the country. Numerous states are now establishing these. Kentucky should take a close look at what is being done in other states and see if it fits Kentucky's needs. These centers are now to be found in places including Florida, Ohio, Texas, and Tennessee. And Ohio has just created, by legislation, 5 new centers along these lines. What's all that about? Well, again, I don't have too much time to say, but it's to create within the campus a kind of protected island in which people can really express their free opinions without fear of censorship or of faculty members losing their jobs and so on. A second thing that Kentucky might take into consideration is creating an American history and government general education requirement. If it did so, it would be joining 10 other states that have just in the last few years created that kind of requirement. If Kentucky required undergraduate syllabus transparency, the third idea, it would be following the Texas model. If it created a system of post-tenure review, it would look at laws passed in Texas, Florida, North Dakota, South Dakota. They've all passed restrictions against inculcating diversity, equity, and inclusion ideology as part of a requirement in campus training. Florida, South Dakota, and Tennessee have passed laws protecting intellectual diversity on campus. Florida's enacted a new accreditation reform, which Kentucky should look at. And of course, there are many other states that have reform bills under consideration that have passed in one chamber, and some have reached the governor's desk only to be met with a veto. These kinds of reforms are not simple and easy to make, but the future of America's youth is going to go beyond coding to learning how to speak up to your key values as a state and as our nation. That is at risk in American higher education. It's unfixable when it comes to the private colleges and universities, but the public colleges and universities over which you have direct control should be reformable, and it will take a big effort to do that. Now, just as a coda to all this, I'd
Mr.
say,
Wood,
well,
we have about, if you could wrap up in about 1 minute.
Okay, my wrap up is that American colleges and universities are in the grips of a professional culture that cannot be reformed simply by passing legislation. Something has to be done at the level of governance, which is the boards of trustees of colleges and universities have to be filled, those seats, with people who understand the problems and are determined to fix them. And I will cede the rest of my time to whatever questions might follow from this. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that presentation. We have a lot of ground to cover in the rest of this meeting. So the way I'm going to handle this segment, I'm going to allow 5 minutes for questions. We're going to have a hard stop at 5 minutes of questions. And I'm going to take these questions in order. So if unfortunately, if the person above you takes too much time, then the people at the bottom will lose out. So Representative Bojanowski is first up.
All right, so Dr. Foster, I have concerns about higher education. I'm concerned that 2/3 of our students have mental health disorders, that we don't have enough pre-service teachers to meet the needs in our classrooms, and that we need to do whatever we can to ensure our workforce is trained for new jobs that are being created in companies like Ford's Blue Oval plant. But you don't address any of my concerns. Instead, you have a list of grievances dating back to 2004. You claim that some students, faculty, and staff feel marginalized. Yet the solution presented by your colleague in writing in our documents has nothing to do with ensuring that no students, staff, or faculty feel marginalized. He states that state laws can restrain university administrators, but they cannot change their hearts. It would come to great surprise to the excellent university presidents that we have in Kentucky that they do not have the capacity in their hearts to ensure that no members of their university communities are marginalized. Do you not see the irony of this presentation?
No, I don't see the irony of this presentation. And I do know people who feel marginalized and people who have left because of the certain ideological balance. So no, I do not see that. And I would like to see people educated properly. And when you mention the jobs that are coming with Ford or whatever, I think we really need to think about what is being taught and what is being told and in some way kind of forced on our students and the other members of the university community.
Representative Wilner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So many questions, but I'm going to try to be fast. And Mr. Wood, this was in your letter, and I'm just going to drill down on one thing. You have a number of recommendations at the end, including getting rid of some areas of study. And I have a constituent who is very curious about what the criteria would be for determining what areas are legitimate and what are not. But my question is it your view that universities, you talk about getting rid of all the therapists, and I'm wondering if it's your view that universities should not provide mental health services?
Universities might well provide insurance for mental health services and allow the private sector that offers such services the opportunity to provide them, but filling up university bureaucracies with therapists, I think, is a terrible idea, and we've experienced that in the form of the encouragement that the therapeutic side of the university gives to those who would replace academic standards with concern over the, quote, harm, which then means psychological harm, done to students who hear opinions they disagree with. I think there is certainly a place for therapy. The number of students who self-report as suffering various forms of mental illness is quite concerning. And there's a very broad and deep discussion about why this particular generation of students has such a high incidence of mental disturbance. But the university is not really the place in which that kind of therapy can be effectively offered. Students need to be referred to people who are competent and capable of addressing the needs of the students directly, rather than trying to be places where they can do all things for all people.
We'll have to go to the next question. Senator Thomas, you will have the last word. You have about 1 minute. Just one more question. We have a hard stop.
Is this Mr. Foster?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Foster, I'm a strong believer in higher education. And it's my understanding, having been on all state university campuses, that they value what I would call the amphitheater of ideas. I've never known any of the 8 state universities here to silence or repel any discussion on any subject on any point of view. I think they would be surprised and would vehemently disagree with you that that's what's going on their campuses today. I think when I hear you propose that we don't talk about issues involving diversity or inclusion, I think you frustrate higher education when you propose that, because education is to enlighten us and hear all kind of different ideas and thoughts and opinions. We don't have to agree with them, but that's what education is. Education enlightens us. My statement to you is not a question, but when you talk about going back or relying upon the Tennessee, Texas, or Florida model, I will tell you that I don't believe history should be required to teach students that slavery was good to them and that it provided them skills that benefited them. I think that would be a distortion of the reality of slavery, and one that I would oppose. I don't think history should teach us that there were some good things that came out of the Holocaust, because I think if you look at what the Holocaust really meant, I would hope we would never go back and repeat that. So I find your and your colleagues' statements today alarming. I think it distorts what learning is really all about. And I hope we certainly don't go in the direction that what we're seeing in states like Tennessee and Texas and Florida, because I think that is not education at its core.
That'll have to be the final word. Thank you for the presentation. Obviously, we know that we are not going to come to a conclusion in a half an hour on this particular subject.
Right. Okay.
Thank you for the information.
Thank you.
Next on our list. Yes. Because we have the Huron report up and we have to allow, we're already way, way behind, and we have to move forward with the Huron report.
Personally, I think a committee meeting in September is the perfect time to go longer than 75 minutes.
No, we've been told we need to keep it within 2 hours, and so we've gone over before, and so we've been requested to keep it within 2 hours. So we're going to keep moving right at this point. Okay. Next, we have the Huron report. Before you get started, just you're not new here, so Hannah, you know the deal. You were supposed to have a lot more time here in this segment. I can tell you this will not be the only meeting on the Huron report. We'll come back to this subject at a later date. But if you could keep your comments to 35 to 40 minutes, and
Yes,
then
sir.
we're gonna I'll leave that much time for questions at the end.
Sure. Is it showing on the screen?
And before you start, if you want to go ahead and state your name for the record, make sure your green light's on. You all can start on this side while she's working on the computer if you want to go ahead and start.
Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Powers with Huron.
Hello, I'm Pam Duncan. I'm General Counsel for KCTCS.
Jennifer Ramey with Huron.
Hello, thank you for having us. I'm Hannah Rivera, Chief of Staff at KCTCS.
Veronica Vasilevsky with Huron.
Thank you. Please proceed whenever you are ready.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you for having us, Senator West and Co-Chair Tipton. I'll get us started today. And before I get to the topic of why we're here, also we'll just take a moment to say that I have been asked about a presidential search, so I'll address that really quickly. We do have 3 finalists for the KCTCS president position, and our Board of Regents will be meeting next week to interview those finalists, and we should have the candidate announced by September 29th next Friday. As a side note, sorry, we will get back to why we're here right now.
Thank you.
Yes. So I have been making my rounds in the interim and trying to meet with every legislator. So if I've met with you already, thank you. If I have not met with you, please know that I'm coming for you. We have lived and breathed this Huron study for the last year. And luckily, I'm here with the experts today. I would never try to steal credit from President Stivers or say that we were head of this body, but actually our Board of Regents, ahead of Senate Joint Resolution 98 that came out last session, did see the need to take a comprehensive look at our system and our 16 colleges and our system office. So you will recall that Senate Joint Resolution 98 asked for three things: examining the feasibility of a four-year university in Eastern Kentucky, examining the governance structure of higher education in Kentucky, and looking at KCTCS to determine whether our job training and technical education should be separated from general academic courses. I don't want to assume that everyone on this committee knows the history of KCTCS, so I'll briefly run through it. Before 1997, Kentucky did have trade schools that were under the Labor Cabinet of Kentucky, and then there were the community colleges that were under UK. In 1997, Governor Patton decided that he wanted these two to merge. So the General Assembly met in a special session and voted to pass the Post-Secondary Education Act of 1997, which, among other things, created KCTCS and set goals to be reached by 2020. So the result of that legislation was KCTCS and the 16 community and technical colleges that are now across the Commonwealth. Students could now go to a 2-year college that provided certificates, diplomas, and associate's degrees, and use our associate degrees to transfer to the universities or go straight into the workforce in high-demand fields like welding, plumbing, and allied health. So, of course, here we are today in 2023, and the 2020 goals are still in place. So, of course, it's time to for this body to go back and look at those and see where we are. And of course, due to several leadership changes in recent years, KCTCS and our governing board saw this and thought that they needed to look and see what we are doing really well, what we're not doing so well, and what we need to change. So that is the basis of the Huron study. Our board voted to move forward with it in 2022. The contract review committee of this body approved it in November of 2022. And ever since then, we've been working diligently to look at every aspect of our system. With that brief introduction, I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues here, and I will pass it down to our General Counsel, Pam Duncan.
Thank you, Hannah, and thank you, senators, representatives, greatest uncles. Thank you for having us here. If you will let me kind of digress a little bit into the personal before I get to the professional. I have Kentucky in my DNA. I have a mother who was born in a coal camp in Eastern Kentucky, Blue Diamond. I have an aunt who still lives in Paintsville. I also have a husband whose grandmother was born on a farm in Logan County. So Kentucky is extremely important to me, and next to that, education is extremely important to me. I began my career as a high school teacher and went through UK's teacher education program. I then went through UK law school, and every step along the way, I think of Elsie Mae Allen and Fannie Bean Duncan, because they are people who valued education, and they range from one end of Kentucky to the other. And those women are really what KCTCS is all about. And every day I wake up, I think as a first-generation student, that's what I want for our students, the ability to dream of a new path and a new way forward. And so this project, as Hannah said, we have lived and breathed for a year now, and will continue to live and breathe for many months more. It began as a committee of our Board of Regents, the Resource Optimization Committee. They undertook an RFP, and the contract was awarded to Huron. And we continue to meet daily, sometimes 2 and 3 times a day, to try and gather the data that will help KCTCS provide the most efficient and the most valuable education to its students, as well as to provide a good working place for our staff and faculty. So to tell you a little bit about where we've been, because there is a lot out there, over 200 pages of a report and multiple meetings and town forums, I will hand it over to our Huron leads and let them explain what has happened.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the Interim Joint Committee on Education. Hopefully that's working. It's an honor to be presenting here to you today in the Commonwealth, and we'll be sharing with you a summary of the work that KCTS has done since the beginning of this year, and really wanting to assess physical resources, academic programs, administrative support structures, really to identify opportunities for enhancement. So we want to share with you the opportunities that were identified and prioritized by the college presidents, by the system, and by the Board of Regents, and then the next steps that KCTCS is going to do in moving forward with the work. So that's our agenda for today, and we will keep it moving and keep it quick per instruction. So as mentioned already, and Pam, I think, did a really nice job outlining this, KCTCS engaged us to assess that current state organization-wide, and in order to do so, we met with over 2,300 individuals. We conducted over 90 interviews, 20 focus groups, 17 town halls all across Kentucky, so we got to see our wonderful Commonwealth driving through the state and going institution, college to college. And we reviewed a great deal of data that was provided by KCTCS and compared it to its peers. And so the outcome of the interviews, the data, the analysis, were about 47 academic, space, and financial and organizational opportunities, totaling almost $19 to $43 million in revenue generation and cost savings. And you'll find out more about those here today. So I know I just outlined the overall objectives and summary of the work, but we wanted to highlight to you really what the actual objectives of the project were that KCTCS set off with. So KCTCS certainly recognized that finding optimized resources and efficiencies in operations and organizational alignment would really support their strategic plan and support student services and employee advancement. And something that really is at the heart of KCTCS, it's something that has resonated for us certainly in doing this work from the beginning as students at the core, and how KCTS thinks about its students, thinks about employability in the community, and its true student focus. And so ultimately, really knowing that our charge was to always keep in mind KCTCS's mission of enhancing the quality of life and economic vitality of the Commonwealth by serving as the primary provider of college and career readiness is the mission. Opportunities in support of the objective were identified through the lens of what would it mean for KCTCS in financial opportunity, in benefit recognition, in productivity impact, risk mitigation, cultural impact. So that was really the framework in which any of the opportunities that we looked at were discussed and were shared with. The president's, sorry, should I keep going?
You can keep moving. She's
Keep
just
moving?
going to
Okay,
enlarge the screen.
perfect. So the presidents, the system, and the Board of Regents applied those impacts that I just mentioned to the opportunities in deciding what made best sense to move forward with. And as I said, again, we'll be sharing those with you shortly. Thank you. So we also recognize, we can go to the next slide. Thank you. So we also recognize that while we have discussed the project overview, the objectives, provided a bit more clarity on these three areas that were our true areas of focus and homing in on to really surface those key opportunities. And really, these three areas are the key to understanding and painting the picture that KCTCS truly wanted to be thorough in their approach and application of seeking efficiencies across the board. And that was our charge. So the areas of focus included first assessing space, everyone's favorite topic, space across the colleges, to see where there could be underutilized space, perhaps repurposed space. And really a lot of this was under the lens, especially under the changes that COVID brought, and knowing that online education and how that was applying now to education really was impactful in those pivots that happened during COVID and how that impacts space. Second, analyzing the academic programs in order to understand how much it costs to educate a student. What is that true cost to educate a student at KCTCS? What programs or areas are growing? And do they correspond to the needs of the market in which they serve? And back to that community forward mission at KCTCS and the student, and meeting the student needs. And third, looking across the organization at the organizational structure and staffing to identify high levels of opportunities where the structure could be adjusted to gain efficiency and collaboration. And so I mentioned earlier the extensive engagement at the colleges in order to surface these opportunities. It was very important that the voice of KCTCS was heard. And so we kind of recapped that here for you if we haven't been clear about that already. So the engagement, all of the interviews, the town halls, the conversations, the emails, the meetings, the data that was all used to surface these opportunities. And so with that, I am going to turn it over to my colleagues Veronica and Chris to talk more specifically about those 47 opportunities that were profound, how that prioritization happened, what opportunities were chosen, and then how is KCTS moving forward in the future. So Chris and Veronica, I'll turn it to you.
Great, thank you. And if you can't hear me, let me know. So as Pam and Jennifer mentioned, we have been working with KCTCS since earlier this year, and the focus of the last phase of work really was those blue steps that you see here. The first part was the assessment. So Jennifer already noted all of the engagement that we conducted across the organization to ensure that voices were being heard. We heard areas of opportunity, strengths of the organization across the board. This is where we collected quantitative data as well and the data analysis, and then any additional qualitative data that we can gather. The next step was identification. So through these efforts, through this engagement, through all of this data analysis, really worked through identifying a list of up close to 50 opportunities for KCTCS to consider across the board. Chris will touch on that in a couple of slides. But we reviewed all of these opportunities with KCTCS leadership, with the Board of Regents, with the President's leadership team to, again, ensure that it's tailored for KCTCS and KCTCS specific. And the last step was prioritization. So we laid out the 47 opportunities that we identified, and then the Board of Regents and the President's leadership team worked together to prioritize the opportunities that they would like to, as a leadership team, move forward with in the next calendar year. And again, we'll touch on that in a couple of slides, but currently KCTCS is in the design and implementation phase of those prioritized opportunities. Huron is supporting several of those opportunities as well to continue conducting analyses, continue engaging the community at large to ensure that KCTCS continues having the tools to move this forward as well. And then on the next slide, you can see here, I'll quickly touch on that opportunity identification stage because that was such a critical component of the work. As I mentioned, this really focused on both the qualitative and the quantitative components and data gathering with KCTCS. So we conducted the interviews, the focus groups, we met with colleges at large to really ensure that voices were being heard. On the previous slide that you saw in the engagement, we had an anonymous email so individuals could send in any additional feedback if they were not able to attend these conversations. And so based on that, we ultimately identified this list of 47 opportunities, which I'll share on the next slide, and then throughout additional conversations prioritized ultimately as well. But I will turn it over to Chris to walk through the overview.
Yeah. So through all that work, we identified 47 opportunities. There are a number of opportunities per work stream. So we had this list here on the left from the space utilization work stream, the academic programming work stream, and the financial and organizational structure work stream. And then we also did identify a few other opportunities that didn't necessarily fit into one bucket perfectly. You can see all 47 opportunities there. Some of them are highlighted in green, which are ones that we think have a financial benefit, either that being cost reduction or revenue enhancement. And then there's a bunch of opportunities there as well that are not highlighted in green, and those are strategic opportunities or process improvement opportunities, which there may be some benefit financially, but harder to quantify. So through this process, we shared with the President's leadership team, the PLT, and the board, how do we take 47 opportunities and really prioritize which ones to move forward with. 47 would be too many to act on immediately, so let's pick the high value ones first, get through those, and then slowly chip away at the rest of them. So through this, we then narrowed it down to we being the royal we here, the KCTCS leadership team and board worked through a prioritization process to narrow it down to, on the next slide, these opportunities here. We had those 47, and you're seeing about 7 here. It's not really a one-to-one because there was a few opportunities that kind of can be bundled together. But the ones here that are being prioritized by the team are space utilization and digging 1 or 2 layers deeper than what we've identified so far. We did find through enrollment trends and through the use of online courses and things like that, there are some spaces that maybe not fully utilized the way that they used to have been. So there's opportunities there to look at things differently. There may be opportunities to look at P3 agreements. There's a lot of community activities happening within the different colleges and on the different campuses. So looking at those different agreements is all kind of bucketed within that space utilization group. The next is looking through the capital construction process. There's a lot of layers of review and approval to get a project approved to move forward with, and there are options that the team is looking for to kind of create resources in-house to kind of expedite some of those steps in the process. The third is academic programming. Huron's team built a very comprehensive and complex model with a lot of different pieces of data, student data, financial data, enrollment data, indirect costs, direct costs, all of that. And the next layer of that is giving that to the chief academic officers, the CAOs at each of the colleges, and making sure that they can now make data-informed decisions about their programs. Which programs need to be invested in more? Which ones are maybe high cost that there's opportunities to reduce costs? Where are your current programs aligning with the market? Are there opportunities to grow certain programs, or are there programs that don't currently align with the market and maybe we should consider sunsetting those? So that model will be used there for the CAOs to make those decisions. The next group is the org structures and services group. There is the system office and 16 colleges. There's people around doing different financial duties and IT duties and HR duties and all of that. So the next step is really understanding who's doing what on the college campuses versus the system office, and understanding if there's opportunities to structure the administrative work differently than currently. There's a lot of different models out there across the country, different systems doing different things, whether that be shared services or regional models or pod models, or looking at different types of opportunities there. So there's a group working on that. The next one is strategic sourcing. So this is how do we leverage the size and scale of the entire system to get the best contracts, get the best pricing, and save money there. The second to last one is data strategy. There's a lot of data to make decisions across the system, but how do we make sure that that data is the most clean, consistent? What one college is saying is apples to what another college is saying data-wise. So making sure that we have clear, consistent data. And the last one is a project management office. There's a lot of different initiatives happening. There's a lot of people involved. There's 16 colleges. There's a system office. And so this project management office really just provides some cohesion to all of the different initiatives and accountability to make sure that all those projects aren't just sitting on a shelf and don't move forward, and that the different opportunities identified through this process and other initiatives are implemented, and making sure everyone's kind of looped in on that. So there's all of those are the ones that the team is moving forward with. Through Huron's expertise and our knowledge of this work, we've been asked to help with a few of pieces of it, and then the KCTCS team is pushing forward on the other ones. And this group here approved that contract about a month ago. So we are just kind of getting started, but just to give you a quick overview of where that stands and where we're going over the next few months. So the first one is that academic programming deep dive, which I gave a quick overview, but we have that complex model with all the different data pieces, making sure that the CAOs, the chief academic officers, are able to leverage that data and really make decisions for their specific colleges. The next I kind of talked about, but the organizational structures and how do we think about administrative effort across all of the system office and 16 colleges, and are there opportunities to do things differently there org structure-wise? And the last one is I also just mentioned is that project management office. So of that list on the previous slide, the whole team is moving forward with that, and Huron's working on the side to help with these. The goal of Huron's role is to really help the KCTCS team feel like they can own things and move forward with things. And our role slowly starts to transition where we kind of fade into the background and let the CAOs and the team drive things once we help them stand it up and be autonomous there. I think we have one last slide. Just a quick little overview of our timeline. You can see the long blue boxes slowly start to fade away as we get later on to this project, and that's intentional. Our goal is to stand things up, give people the data, help them make the decisions, and then as those decisions are working through, we slowly start to fade into the background and let the team own it. So I think that is our last slide, and so we will take any questions.
I've got a couple questions before we get into members' questions, but we also have a speaker that will speak here in just a second. I can't remember, does each member have a copy of this report? Do we know yet?
Yes, sir, they should. And we also have available the full 240-page. We have the presentation available for the members right now. We have the 240-page report that we are happy to distribute to all members if they wish to have it. And we also have the brochures, which include the top 12 priorities that we just mentioned that are moving forward as we speak.
If you could, please send the report to all members of this committee.
Yes, sir, we'll do that.
As the members can tell, this isn't going to be our last discussion of the Huron report. There's a lot of meat here, but we do have someone signed up to speak. If she could come forward at this time, we're going to let her speak, and then we'll circle back for members' questions.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Yep. Hello, if you would state your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Wendy Fletcher, and I'm a family nurse practitioner from Moorhead, Kentucky, and I thank you for allowing me to speak today.
You've got about 5 minutes.
Okay. Thank you, Senator West, Representative Tipton, and this entire community for indulging me today. A concerned citizen, a small business owner, a Kentucky taxpayer, and the parent of one public regional university graduate and Kentucky medical school graduate, but also the mother of a current public regional university senior who will graduate, Lord willing, next spring. As someone who pays both taxes and tuition, I have a great appreciation for your committee work and for your service to the Commonwealth, but I also have a vested interest in KCTCS, having served as a regent to the board for the last 4 years. Many of you have listened to my testimonies over the last 20 years in other committees as a nurse practitioner or as an advocate for sound public policy on a variety of topics, but some of you may only know me as a now former KCTCS regent. For that reason, I felt the need to be clear on this point. I do not speak for the KCTCS Board of Regents today, and nothing I'm telling you is privileged or confidential from my time on the board. But because of my years of service to the Commonwealth in that role, I do have information I believe can help you consider what you've heard here today. And at the very least, I feel that by saying it, it will fulfill my obligation to look out for the best interests of every KCTCS student, faculty, and staff member, and the taxpayers who fund this tired, decades-old system that desperately needs innovation, modernization, and resource optimization. Last November, as you've heard today, I was asked by the President and the Cabinet leadership of KCTCS to attend a Legislative Government Contract Committee chaired by Senator Meredith to testify on the scope and the necessity of the Huron contract, a $1.6 million project. At that time, I was the chair of the Resource Optimization Committee, which, as you've heard, the board affectionately referred to as the ROC, knowing that the work before us to improve resource utilization, optimize physical space across 70 campuses and a system office, while modernizing policies and procedures, eliminating redundancies, modernizing academic offerings, and finally dealing with decade-long compensation and compression issues for our faculty and our staff, would require a literal moving of mountains. We chiseled away and away for months as a committee with KCTCS staff and 4 of their college presidents serving as our advisors, and then with the entire Board of Regents to develop the RFP that you've heard about today to choose the correct vendor. At the end of that year of work, our committee and the Board of Regents voted unanimously to approve this Huron project. Fortunately, the Government Contract Committee saw the need for the data to support an overhaul and also voted unanimously to approve this study. And well, as you see, here we are. KCTCS has a nearly $1 billion with a B dollar budget. It deserves your attention, and as a taxpayer, it demands mine. Today, you've heard testimony from Huron, a world-class organization with a world-class reputation, who came to Kentucky and did exactly what the Board of Regents asked them to do. Show us where we're failing our students, our talented faculty and staff, our workforce employers and taxpayers of the Commonwealth. Show us, we asked, where we have opportunities to better ourselves and give us qualitative information as well as quantified data. And benchmark us against the best, not just our opponents, because we want to be the best. And that's exactly what the Board of Regents wanted, and that's exactly what Huron did. We wanted data we could use to drive decisions, to affect real change, and to bring sunlight to what needed to be seen so that KCTCS could actually meet the statutory requirement to be an efficient, responsive, and coordinated system of providers. This deep dive into resources helped me question and uncover $75 million in funds that were owed back to the 16 colleges in chargebacks that had been withheld by the previous system administrators. It also helped the board drive a quality improvement project surrounding online learning education. As one of the college presidents, who hated me for even asking the question initially, told me later, you helped us see that we had some room for improvement where we thought we were okay, but as a result, we've now closed that gap for our students. And that, friends, is what it's all about, striving to always be better. Sincere thanks is owed by me and our board to former KCTCS board chair Lisa Damaris for encouraging us to keep asking these hard questions, and to Pam Duncan, general counsel, Hannah Rivera, our board liaison, and Buddy Combs, our acting VP of finance, who all answered our relentless questions and who have tirelessly fought from within KCTCS for as long as I've known them to make KCTCS better. But after 3 years of being told by others that I just, quote, wasn't asking the right questions, I know that without these people, my questions would have certainly gone unanswered, and those $75 million in funds would have continued sitting in a hidden row on a spreadsheet in the system office. Huron data is now in hand. The board had set forth its 2023 spring retreat and subsequent board meetings to prioritize a dozen specific projects that, if carried out to completion, will have an enormous fiscal impact for taxpayers in Kentucky. In fact, over $40 million in savings. And this will make KCTCS more efficient and more responsive to Kentucky's overall workforce needs. You should take a look at that punch list in detail and know that the board voted to make it happen. I'm hopeful the soon-to-be-named KCTCS system president understands the business side of education, the workforce needs of Kentucky, that our presidents will stop telling our workforce advisors and VPs to slow down. They're going too fast. And that that person has the leadership style to lead KCTCS through significant changes that need to come. As to the more coordinated system, mandate, and statute, without a true visionary at the helm, I believe the legislature may have to step in and explore more modern options for our system. But I believe that you now have data in front of you to make those decisions. You're likely going to need to define in statute things like community presence, and explore and enforce the possibilities of single accreditation or regionalization and what that will mean for all of KCTCS as well as Kentucky taxpayers. And please ensure that the boots on the ground people who make up KCTCS, most of whom are currently compressed so far below their market value for their positions, they'll either die or retire before they ever get near mid-market pay. Please do not forget these people in the process. They are KCTCS. KCTCS needs to be a true system, unified for the Commonwealth.
You got about just if you could wrap it up, please.
Thank you. With a single mission, a single vision, and a set of policies and procedures with a community presence that gives access to meaningful, technical, and transferable credit education, workforce agility, that actually improves one's potential for better pay and moves the needle on the poverty problem that has plagued Kentucky for generations. That cannot be done, in my opinion, with a 16 times over duplication of effort. That cannot be done when dual credit scholarships are only awarded to the top of the class college-bound students, discriminating against those middle group students who are highly capable of earning a technical skill certificate but are not immediately college-bound. That cannot be done where there is a distinct lack of advising between colleges and their regional partners to assure every hour taken not only transfers, but counts toward a degree, thus helping that student complete their degree in a timely fashion. I'm almost done, I promise. As a mother of dual credit earners, I can attest to the fact that dual credit actually costs many parents like me more money, not less. You should be asking for data tracking for completion dates of degrees for transfer students, as you may be as dismayed as me to find out that a 4-year degree still takes 4 years to complete, even after you transfer in dual credit hours to most of the regional universities offering bachelor's degrees. Speaking of dual credit and dual credit scholarships, you should definitely be questioning how many students in KCTCS colleges are dual credit learners, which, in case you didn't realize, taxpayers like me pay for twice. We pay for SEEK funding to the high school, plus half tuition to the colleges or universities where those same students earn those college credits, even when they never step foot on a college campus. Lastly, I want to share my reflections about the culture of KCTCS and how that culture impedes its progress and makes a complete overhaul entirely necessary before the coordinated system of providers mandate can be accomplished. People who raise concerns are not troublemakers. You need to seek them out and you need to listen to them. People who raise concerns do not risk the reputation of KCTCS service. In fact, they are often the servants. People who raise concerns should not be pushed out of conversations, passed over for promotion, or unfairly compensated, even with their exceedingly exemplary performance reviews year after year. These behaviors are professionally damaging and serve as a warning to anyone else who would raise the concern to, well, not to. This in turn leads to burnout, brain drain, and an unnatural attrition of our best and brightest educators, who, like nurses in this state, are essential but on the decline. It's a social rejection that creates a workplace culture that does not support unity around the mission, but rather a culture of fear, retaliation, and punishment. And that, my friends, helps no one. Your job is not an easy one.
We need to have time for questions from members. If you could wrap it up, please.
Your job is not an easy one, but I'm going to ask you to consider the information you've heard today from Huron, KCTCS staff, and heed the advice of our state auditor, Mike Harmon, and simply follow the data. Ask the right questions, then ask them again. Stop letting decades-old political tides content to ebb and flow but never really move, hold back what should be Kentucky's poverty-fighting warship, which is KCTCS. Some of the best people I know have given their lives to KCTCS, and I'm proud to have served alongside them and with them. They deserve better. Kentucky deserves better. That's why I came today, and that's why I thank you now for your time and your attention.
Thank you so much. If Huron would move back to the table, we will now open it up for questions from members. We've got about 10 minutes. As stated before, I'm going to put a hard stop on that at 10 minutes. Representative Raymond.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask you all, did you find that the marginalization of conservative students affected either revenue or cost savings?
I'd say that wasn't in scope of what we were looking at.
Okay, so it wasn't in the top 47 priorities. Thank you.
Senator Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And my question is for Ms. Duncan and Mr. Powers. Okay. As I listened to you today and made notes, it seemed to me that there were 3 important questions missing. And maybe they're there, so help me out here. Number 1, how are we going to attract more students to KCTCS? I didn't see that discussed here. Number 2, what kind of offerings are we going to add to KCTCS in the future? You heard at the beginning of this session How are we talking about, doing something different with our K through 12 education here in Kentucky and adding computer science in all high schools and in K through 8. I mean, that's something that we're thinking about doing. I didn't hear anything about, what's new on the forefront that we should add to KCTCS. And then thirdly, how are we going to graduate more students from KCTCS? How are we going to get more students there? I mean, those are three critical questions. And I must tell you that I asked those questions because what I came away with from your initial presentation is that this report was very academic in nature, but it did lack pragmatism in terms of how we're going to fund this billion-dollar institution in a way in the future that's going to yield significant benefits to Kentucky. So if I'm missing that, please answer those questions for me.
I can go. So as we'll let you see the 240-page report, and there is a lot more than what we were able to present. One of the key things that we didn't talk too much about, to answer your question, would be we did a market positioning analysis, which is looking at the number of jobs offered within the region and what that looks like over the next 10 years, and then tried to align that with the current programs offered at KCTCS. And the goal was to identify programs that that KCTS doesn't currently offer, where there may be opportunities. So I think that answers hopefully your first two questions about how do we attract new students and look at new programs.
And I would add to that, this entire process is about making KCTCS really kind of move beyond its toddler clothes into its adult clothes. We are still laboring under policies and procedures, academic programs, and other processes that are sometimes 10, 15, and 20 years old. So I think what we're talking about is creating a more efficient workplace so that those particular activities that recruit, reach out to students and retain students and create innovation in the institution will be more at the forefront than continuing to try to piece together a proper compensation framework or a proper policy framework. So I think there are steps in this process, but definitely the academic programming looked at what was cost effective to actually run a program, and also what we need to do to tweak to be able to reallocate resources to those programs that will actually benefit students.
Senator Givens.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I've been looking forward to this report and the presentation for some time. And so I've got more of a statement that's going to sound like a criticism, but it's an observation, and maybe you can correct or help tell me where I am wrong. And I'm reading specifically from the blue tab that you have in front of us. And I don't intend for this. I intend for this to be a constructive criticism. Your verbs concern me. You've picked out 12 things that you've listed here, and your verbs concern me. And I mean it, again, in a positive way, but let's just use number 5, for example. Review current academic offerings. You're going to review something. The next verb on number 6, refine the program creation. Number 7, we see review again. I have a sense that you're doing lots of evaluation and reviewing. I don't see the word implement in a lot of these, and I would love for it to say review and implement by date certain what you're going to implement, because I have a sense that from these verbs, we're doing lots of reviewing.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that question. I want to emphasize to this committee that Huron as a firm was brought on to do assess, collect data, do the town halls, all of the information that you were presented with earlier. What they identified in their 47 opportunities, and then further addressed in these 12 opportunities that we are moving forward with immediately. They are doing those verbs, identifying, evaluating. It is ultimately up to our college presidents, our 16 college presidents, our system president, and our board of regents to take that information and make the decisions. It is not Huron's responsibility as the firm to say these are the programs that need to go. They are simply collecting the data and reporting on that, and then it is leadership's responsibility to determine what programs need to go or what buildings need to close, etc. So I want to make sure that this committee realizes Huron is the backbone of this study. Ultimately, they can only do so much, and our leadership are the ones that are tasked with carrying it forward.
Thank you for the answer, Hannah, correct?
Yes.
Please share with your university leaders that we're engaged and we're anxious to know the dates of implementation, the righting of the ship, and the verbs that are going to implement these verbs. Reviews are great, but without action, it's a dusty report on a shelf.
And Mr. Chair, I want to second that because that's my point. It's again, I see this as very academic, with no meat on the bone at all as to how KCTCS is going to again create. Attract more students, graduate more students, and have new offerings that are going to be beneficial to the state of Kentucky in the long run. So I second what Senator Givens said.
I'm going to jump in with a question right here. So I didn't intend to ask this question, but it follows along with Senator Givens. So obviously we know what Huron, their job is here. And in my way of thinking, they've done a fantastic job of laying a bunch of they've reviewed the current process. Who is the point person at KCTC assigned to implement the Huron study and carry it out? Is that the new president, or is that the board? Has KCTC determined who that person is?
I believe that ultimately that lies on the shoulders of the KCTCS president, who is reports to the governing board, our KCTCS Board of Regents, but all the 16 colleges presidents report up to the system president. So ultimately, as a system-wide study, in my mind, and please correct me if I'm wrong here because there may be different interpretations, but to me it would be ultimately the system president responsible for ensuring completion.
So it's going to be a nice honeymoon for the president.
Yes, sir.
Senator Fromeyer.
Thank you for this opportunity. In fact, I did have an opportunity myself to serve on the Gateway Community and Technical College Foundation Board from 2014 to 2018. During that cycle, there was a president replacement, and Fernando is currently the president. But I will second what I'm hearing from Senator Thomas, Senator West, and Senator Givens. I completely respect the poverty-fighting worship. Growing up in DeMossville myself, recognizing that our President Stivers is from a very impoverished eastern Kentucky, we need so much more from KCTCS. We need so much more. And I'm going to beg you, that is one reason I am here as a senator. I have Bracken County, I have Pendleton County, and I have Southern Campbell County. I beg you. And I can't say that I recognize the value of a project management office when we have the office of the president of KCTCS. Bureaucracy makes me shiver. And I'm just, again, excited to hear where we go from here. Timelines, metrics, students, they change lives. And my son is a Gateway Community and Technical College welder. However, we double paid. Maybe triple paid. And that's not right. So thank you so much for this great, great work. Keep it up.
Co-Chair Tipton, you'll be the final word.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for coming and presenting this today. I've got some comments, and I do have a question. If we're going to meet the workforce challenges of Kentucky, if we're going to address the issues of poverty and improving quality of life, KCTCS plays a vital role in that. And it's like a team that practices. You got to continually strive to get better. And I'm going to make a comment, and don't take offense at this. If KCTCS chooses not to implement, the General Assembly may choose to implement. So keep that in mind. Here's my question to the Huron folks at Huron. We have 16 colleges and 70 campuses. Was there any evaluation? Did you look at the feasibility, possible efficiencies of possible consolidation in your review?
So I would say at this point, the scope of the work wasn't the potential consolidations, though I will say the work that we'll be doing in the organizational design will be, as Chris outlined it, which is looking where there could be shared services, where there could be, if it's a pod, as we mentioned, a regional model, what that might look like is absolutely something that we will be looking at in this next phase of work. And I know just personally, I heard a lot about implementation today, and I think it might be helpful to, when you think of the timeline, this next phase of work is for academics. And in answer to some of your questions and comments earlier of how does KCTCS plan for the future? How do you think about the future and employing your graduates and meeting the needs of the workforce? That's exactly what's happening in this next phase of work now that we're working on with each of the colleges and looking at the academic programs and understanding where might there be gaps, where do you have some of those going forward needs that maybe aren't captured right now in programs and so can be forward thinking. And then on the program management side or the management office side, to you, Senator Fromeyer, I think that what the goal of that is to provide is exactly what you're asking for, which is accountability. And I think that's what everyone here is asking for today is accountability. And the goal of setting up that management office is reporting so that you're well apprised, that the regents are well apprised, that leadership is well apprised of where things are going well, where there could be a little hiccup along the way and things need to progress more quickly, how the path towards implementation is being moved towards, because there is a plan for a path towards implementation. And that's something that KCTS has been very strong about in their charge to us. But I do think that accountability piece is something that's rang true from us in the beginning in our charge of work is how can, now that we have these opportunities, how can KCTCS remain accountable? Yes, the president is going to have a big charge on their plate when they join, a lot on their hands. So what is that side partner to make sure things are running and it doesn't become, a dusty study on the shelf? And so that's our charge, and then to hand that over and for KCTCS to run and to have that for sustainability for the future, so that any future opportunities, any things that are enacted upon, there's that same level of accountability that you can ensure as you go along in reporting.
Thank you so much. That'll have to be the last word. Excellent presentation. We know that this will be a subject that we come back to on a regular basis, especially as we get closer to session. But thank you for your presentation today. As a public service announcement to the members, it's a decision of the chair. We are attempting to stay at the 2-hour limit. The reason we're doing that is members from West Kentucky, East Kentucky, they schedule other meetings. We have other committee meetings. There's leadership meetings. We have meetings in our offices, and we're trying to keep everyone on task, on schedule, so they can schedule those and we don't mess up the rest of the day. So that's the purpose of attempting to stay within the 2-hour time frame. So that will be it for today. Our next meeting is October 17th.